I'm specifically talking to women who are dealing with unexplained chronic symptoms because this is such an annoying place to be. Like, you are actually doing all the things to feel better, but you're wired but tired. You have persistent anxiety. You have so many gut issues. Like, have you ever heard the term like hot girls have tummy issues, right? By the way, it shouldn't be true, but we're seeing it left, right, and center. These unexplained gut issues, all these intolerances, all this bloating, all these digestive issues and digestive distress, and many times not having an explanation or like seemingly doing all the things to heal and still having problems. We're seeing all sorts going on with women's cycles. Things like unexplained acne, low libido, inconsistent cycles, lots of cramping. There's so many symptoms and nuances within that. And there's so little explanation as to why, as women collectively, we are exhausted, we are wired, we are burnt out, we're having pain, we're having anxiety, we're struggling to do like basic things in the day, yet we still have that demand of like, you've got to get things done. You've got to go, 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 right? I want to give you the 4 steps that you need to take if you are in this specific boat. Like, you are a woman who has these unexplained chronic symptoms and you feel like you're doing a lot to heal, but like nothing's working and you're not getting clear answers. So these are the 4 steps that I give my clients in this position. First and foremost, I want you to understand that like you are so not alone. I have worked with thousands of women in this specific scenario, and this is my favorite place to be because there's so much that we can do, and it's such a population of individuals who have really been let down. I was in this boat myself for so long. It took climbing out of this like dark hole myself to be able to come out here and say healing is possible. And there are ways that you can get out of this. And it really does start with bringing it back to the basics, but maybe not basics in the way that you have thought of. So in order to understand why this is happening, I want to really strip it back. A lot of you might be familiar with this. This might be new. So I'm going to meet kind of everyone where they're at and bring it back to the foundational piece of understanding that these kinds of chronic symptoms ultimately are indicators that your very primitive nervous system is stuck in a hypervigilant state. So what that means is your nervous system is stuck in survival. Your nervous system only understands 2 things. It understands safety and it understands survival. It doesn't understand micro stressors. So micro stressors are things that are not life-threatening, right? So like the daily demands that we have as women in the 21st century perhaps are not life-threatening, but because our nervous system doesn't understand that, it's constantly perceiving everything as I'm going to go get dead. Like I'm about to go get eaten by a lion. So because of that, we are living under chronic stress. We are literally living our lives as though we're consistently being chased, like we're about to die. That's what the body thinks. And so because no organism in nature can withstand the effects of long-term stress, the body starts to slowly break down. Now, not like irreparably, right? But these symptoms that we see are indicators of that sequence of events. So they're indicators of, hold on, your nervous system, which is way more primitive than our modern environment, very much thinks that you are about to be killed. And so we need to find a way to get the message across that that's not happening. But like on a physiological level, when your body is living in the state of fight or flight, if you think about it, during that time where you're running away from a lion, it's going to pause a lot of the functions within the body that are not necessary for survival. So that's where you start to see things like digestive distress, right? So if you think about it, things like digestion and absorbing nutrients, that is not necessary for survival. That's necessary for thriving, right? So survival, you need to be able to run, you need to be able to fight, you need to be able to bite, right? Those are the mechanisms at play if you're running away from a bear or a lion. So when you live your life in this way, again, thinking about your body consistently thinks that you're about to be attacked, things like digestion shut down. So your gut motility slows down, you have bloating, indigestion, nausea, your stomach acid production is reduced. So you're not going to be able to break down foods properly. enzyme secretion is reduced, so you're not actually even absorbing the nutrients. So for all my girls who are out there like eating the perfect diet and taking all the supplements, we can't experience the benefit of this, which is why you're always up against it when you're trying to heal. But then if you want to talk about something like anxiety, which is a huge issue, or wired but tired, so feeling like you've got all this adrenaline but you're exhausted, you have brain fog, all of that. If you think about what's happening within the body when you're living in this state of chronic stress, you have this secretion of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, which it gives you energy and is great when moderated, right? When you come back down. But if you're not coming back down, you're all of a sudden going to essentially rewire your physiology to find normality within that cortisol response. So basically, you're going to get used to always being on, always having that adrenaline. And so you're going to struggle to get good sleep, because sleeping is definitely not something you want to do when you're in survival, right? So you're going to be like so tired because you're not resting, but your heart's going to be going. You're going to be having these racing thoughts because your body thinks you're getting attacked by a bear. Your hormones are going to get totally thrown off. We are going to see things like low libido, big time. We're going to see things like really, really long periods or really, really short periods. We are going to see a lot of PMS, a lot of acne, a lot of cramps. So it is absolutely to blame for all these issues that we're seeing with our hormones and all of this disruption. And honestly, the explanation can go on and on and on, and we can go into these things individually in videos, but I just want you to have an understanding of like why this is even happening in the first place, and also to give you the 4 kind of easiest hacks, like the lowest hanging fruit of what you're going to do. I want to start with number 1, and it's going to be like literally taking you through the day. Number 1 is to create a stable rhythm in the morning. So let's talk about what that means. So when you wake up in the morning, your cortisol is at its peak. So it's like that feeling you get when you're like going from asleep to awake, that cortisol, which we talked about in moderation, like the way that it's supposed to be, it gives you that energy so that you're able to wake up and get out of bed. Now, I know a lot of people might not actually feel that way because they're not getting rest, and there are things we can do to support the normal cortisol production. But generally speaking, when you look at the circadian rhythm, that is the appropriate rhythm, right? The cortisol rising in the morning when you rise. So what we want to be sure of as we are creating a rhythm for our mornings and we are starting to regulate to reduce these chronic symptoms is not reaching for anything when we wake up that's going to spike that cortisol even more. So like, for example, a lot of people reach straight for their phones, and there's a whole conversation to be had about dopamine. But if we're talking about specifically cortisol, you don't want to be spiking it when it's already at its peak. So do not reach for your phone, right? Don't go to your email. Oh my God, do not watch the news. Don't get up and have a cup of caffeine. Don't do anything that's going to stimulate you even more. We want to encourage this natural rise and fall, right? So go ahead and do something grounding. That's how you start the rhythm. So when I say something grounding, I don't mean that you need a 1-hour aesthetic routine. I literally mean that you're going to start journaling. You're going to meditate. Like you are literally just going to ground yourself, and you are going to keep in this grounded state for at least an hour, if not 2, before you stimulate yourself. So I understand that not everybody has the perfect routine. They don't have all the time in the world. I've got 2 young kids, literally 2 toddlers. So I get it. Progress over perfection. What's possible over what's perfect. Okay. So again, very simple tips. That is tip number 1. Step number 2 is blood sugar balance. So this is a hot topic, especially within this community of women who are in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, and going through this specific situation that we're talking about, which is so prevalent amongst this community of these chronic symptoms, right? So what you need to understand is you can't balance your cortisol without balancing your blood sugar, and these things go hand in hand. Like if you're running on coffee and vibes, but you don't have any food, your body actually thinks that you are in starvation, which as well is a life or death situation, and that is keeping you in that cycle of I'm about to be dead. Like I'm literally about to get eaten by a bear, and we all know what happens there. So one of the easiest things that you can do for your body that literally sends the message to the body instantly that you are not about to die is eat. Because if you are running from a bear, you would not be reaching for food, right? So being able to sit there and eat properly, when we'll talk about that, properly at the correct times and supporting your blood sugar is one of the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to regulating your stress hormones. Something to keep in mind, going back to step 1 that I gave you, is that if you are raising that cortisol when it's already at its peak, it's going to keep you hyper alert. Like, obviously, we all know coffee could do that, or caffeine, but even going straight to your phone or to your email or to the news or anything like that that's stimulating, it's going to keep you really, really alert. And insulin gets dysregulated trying to keep up. So already you're impacting, the two go hand in hand. Already you're not just impacting the way your nervous system is primed and ready to act throughout the day, but you're actually impacting inadvertently your blood sugar. This creates a feeling that so many people can relate to, which is like wired and shaky and sweaty and nauseous or bloated and crash. And then going back to the stimulation and getting back on the cycle, right? And so you can see how it's cyclical. And then you crave sugar, caffeine, or salt. So then you have these cravings that are like really strong. And that's because your body is literally screaming for some sort of stability. And then you kind of give yourself these like names of like, I don't have self-control, or I can't hit my wellness goals or my whatever goals because I have all these issues. Well, this is the underlying cause of why the issues are there. And I do want to say, as someone who is a voice in the wellness community, I think there is a risk of overcomplicating this process. So you have these gut issues, you have the shaky feeling, you go and you're told you have all of these specific issues and you might have more going on, but if you're not mastering the low-hanging fruit first, you can't eliminate that actually maybe a large portion of what you're dealing with is actually just this. Okay, so number 3 is like, if you remember anything, remember this. It is regulate before you caffeinate. If you use caffeine before regulating, you are fueling the fire. This is like so important, you guys. If you are stimulating before you implement your practice, you are creating more chaos within the body. The symptoms that you have are literally going to get that much worse every single day that you reach for, not consciously at this point, but self-medicating, whatever, you reach for stimulation before you reach for regulation. They're gonna amplify absolutely everything in your lived experience. But if you take the time to ground yourself and regulate something that regulates you, because if you're in this scenario, you're probably already waking up anxious or with racing thoughts. So if you take the time to regulate before, right, before you eat and before you consume your caffeine and ground yourself, this is going to literally change the way you receive your caffeine. So for those of you who are listening to this, who take your caffeine and feel like super jittery, and you're like, I'm just really sensitive to it, this is just how I am, I would actually challenge you to say that mindful consumption through this approach actually might change the way that you receive it. I see it all the time. Personally, as someone who has been on this journey for now 10 years, a little over 10 years, I come from a South American family. Like, I very much drink my coffee, and I used to receive it in that way. And I've absolutely changed my relationship and the way that I receive it through lots of different things. Like, I'm giving you the 4 like overarching steps here. And it's not just me. I see students change their relationship with it all the time with the tiniest changes that are like so easy. These steps are really, really easy. They're not like go buy a big product or go back to school and get your PhD in this. It's like, do these really small things. They're going to make an impact. And keeping in mind the downstream effect of that is that you literally are going to tell your nervous system that the lion is gone. And when your nervous system feels safe and you go back into rest and digest or parasympathetic, your body naturally starts to go back into balance, going into homeostasis. And that's where these issues start to resolve themselves. That is this self-healing that we can all do. And so many people aren't in a place where they are even doing these things. So it's like, this is going to make a huge change for you. Okay, so number 4 is a bit of a like self-awareness one, and it's track your crash triggers. So you're probably blaming your fatigue on the fact that you just don't sleep well. You're probably blaming your focus on ADHD, or even blaming your cravings on lack of willpower, which we mentioned earlier. So many women are like identifying themselves with these symptoms that are not their fault, right? And so then there's a lot of shame and guilt within that, and also feeling like you're self-sabotaging yourself and unable to meet your goals. But I want to tell you, like, these symptoms are signs of cortisol dysregulation. These symptoms are a byproduct of living chronically in fight or flight. And they're triggered by patterns that you repeat every single day, not consciously, but they're just embedded within the way that you think and live your life, right? So skipping breakfast or skipping a meal, waking up and stimulating yourself right away, overscheduling yourself, dehydrating, and then consuming more caffeine or stimulation or sugar or whatever. These really small decisions have a compounding effect. And once the body gets used to being in that place of constant fight or flight, that just becomes your new normal. So when you start to notice your crash triggers, then you can start to take back control. Because every crash that you have, if you reframe it this way, is now a cue. So it's not, here's a sign of failure. It's, oh my gosh, here is a cue. What is this telling me? And each cue is a chance to rewire your energy response instead of numbing it with more stimulation. So every time you crash, yes, the urge is to stimulate. But instead, in this step, the goal is to note what's happening and then rewire your response. So instead of reaching for stimulation, reach for regulation, reach for groundedness, reach for something to tell your nervous system that you're safe. Because what your nervous system is actually asking for is safety. Yeah, we know that it all boils down to the nervous system feeling unsafe. And so that's what it's calling out for, and that's what we can start to give it. And that's what's going to help us start to regulate. So I hope that these 4 steps were really, really helpful to you. I always want to give you low-hanging fruit that's simple that you can implement and see a massive change right away. And for those of you who are ready to take it to the next level, we are opening the doors to the caffeine cleanse tomorrow. And if the link is up on here, then you are able to go ahead and enroll. This program I specifically wrote for this demographic. So it is literally centered around these 4 points. It's about understanding your own chemistry behind the symptoms that you're feeling, and then the step-by-step strategies for how to create an intentional relationship with the stimulation in your life. And primarily we're speaking about caffeine consumption and the best way to create intentionality behind that. But beyond that, it's what's happening with your circadian rhythm, with your cortisol dysregulation, with your dopamine, all of that that's involved. And then how can we create intention and regulation from morning until night, including what we're eating, what we're drinking, what we're consuming from our phone, from the media, so that we can stabilize our nervous systems, our blood sugar, our cortisol, and really start to find relief from the hormonal dysregulation and the chaos we feel within ourselves. So if you are looking to do that work with me, you can go ahead and click on the link below and join us in the caffeine cleanse. I would love to see you there, and let me know what else you want to learn about.